A warm welcome to Bruce French, who is our guest speaker tonight. When I started thinking about what Bruce does, I thought, I wonder how many seeds or plants I can think of that we eat. And I thought, well, maybe I can come up with a dozen, or if I sort of really think hard, I might be able to think about 15, 20 plants. When I look at Bruce's website, it tells me that he's got a database of 30,000 plants. And I find that just a bit mind-boggling. The work that Bruce does in making this sort of information available to people throughout the world is important, and something that I think is going to be fascinating to hear about. But Bruce, welcome, and I'll hand over to you to talk to us.
So I'll put up lots of pretty pictures so you don't have to sit there looking at me. But our theme for tonight is how to put the right plant in the right place. So just as an example, we tend to take temperate plants to the tropics when we go there, instead of admitting we're ignorant and finding out about tropical plants or the Mediterranean plants or all the others. These days it's got a fancy name, agroecology or the evergreen revolution. And it's the same. Some grow in deserts, some grow in arid areas, some grow on atolls, some grow in Antarctica if you're going down there for your next holiday, mangroves, all sorts of places. And it's not just me on a hobby horse. Lots of organisations around the world have suddenly said, let's rediscover all the local plants we've been ignoring. Let's go for diversity, let's think about nutrition, and let's think about sustainable methods. A few more of these organisations, some of which I've worked for or given talks to, or most of them I've sent information to. And they're all saying the same thing, is rediscover all the local edible plants in the world and come up with better methods. There's a few more of them. I won't stop and give you a talk about them all. But I think this quote here summarises it fairly well. It's on the Sustainable Food Systems website. Today's food and farming systems have succeeded in supplying large volumes of food to global markets, but they're generating negative outcomes on multiple fronts: widespread degradation of land, water and ecosystems, high greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity losses, persistent hunger, micronutrient deficiencies, along with the rapid rise of obesity and diet-related diseases and livelihood stress for farmers all around the world. So if you talk to any farmers lately, it's a fairly pressurised thing. My journey started over 56 years ago. I was studying agriculture. I grew up on a farm, and I thought we had to go and work on a farm to get some experience. I thought I'd get adventurous and go to a mission farm up in the Highlands of New Guinea. And I took a notebook and started making notes about plants that I didn't know, edible plants. And it changed my whole perspective on life going there. And so now I've ended up 56 years later with the largest information system in the world, 34,450 edible plant species. And we're trying to get it all back to the hungry and malnourished in the world. Don't print it all out or you'll need 68 reams of paper. It's getting pretty big. But 128 countries have been getting stuff off our website, so it's disappearing somewhere into cyberspace. We've tried to make it look simple. We've tried to make it look like a book, so you don't have to get scared that it's a computer thing. I had a Solomon Islands lecturer came out. They bought him a computer and sat him at the university, and he didn't know how to turn the computer on. So my wife brought him down and just typed in Solomon Islands and showed him how to press the forward button. And I should have had a tape recorder on. Oh, yes, we do this with this plant. We cook this one. The ladies love this one. He was highlighting all the plants as if he was a computer expert. So it is working, and that's great. As far as I know, it's the only known system with all the edible plants in one place. A fancy international review a few months ago said so. So it's not just my word. But after going up during my prac, I came back and got married. And we took our 6-week-old daughter up into the jungles in Bougainville, where I got a job as the agricultural officer. Just recently, I was on Landline, and someone emailed me and said, You weren't the chap who took your 6-week-old baby up into the jungles, were you? She was there as a temporary teacher for a little while, and so it's fun building these links into the past. But then they turned around and asked me, would I go and teach at what's now a university? Then it was an agricultural college. And on arrival, the students said, don't teach us about Australian plants. We don't live in Australia. We want to know about our plants, how to grow them, how to use them. And then, surprise now, you look back, they sent 2 of us off to a nutrition workshop for 3 weeks. And I thought that was what nurses went to. I didn't realise agriculturalists thought about that. And then they said, you got any idea about the malnutrition in Papua New Guinea? Of course I didn't. My job's to grow plants. Just to make sure we got the message, they took us down to Goroka Hospital and 26 children were dying of malnutrition. They said, we don't think we'll save any. I just burst into tears and walked out because my kids were about that age then. And it really grabbed me and said, why isn't someone doing something? But I was still thinking like a Westerner. I got back to my ag college. I thought all the plants all around us were bananas. And so I sent the students out to look at the bananas while I was trying to work it out. The Tolai people, where I was, have 650 different kinds of bananas. And I was still thinking like a Westerner. I saw this little one and I said, why are you still growing this small one? And they said, oh, it's really nice. We squeeze it all up till it's soft and squashy, cut a little hole and we can squeeze it straight into the baby's mouth. It's our baby food. Then I said, why aren't you growing this other really big one? You can see how big it is, as big as your arm. And they said, oh, that's so big and bulky. If you eat that, you can't do a proper day's work. So we just feed that one to the pigs. So here was me telling him to throw away the baby food and eat the pig food. And I said, okay, you teach me instead. I won't be the expert. Can you imagine if you had to eat sweet yellow bent bananas every day of the week? It wouldn't be very nice every meal. They've got varieties for snacks, varieties for boiling. Some you bake, some you dip in your soup, some you roast, some you brew, some you use for desserts, all kinds of bananas. Uganda, down near the lake, is a similar situation. They've got 238 kinds. And a very rich man, I won't tell you who he is, has just given 40 million to an Australian university to breed one banana rich in vitamin A. Then they're going to say, eat lots and lots of this one, don't bother about the others. I should have said right at the beginning, my motivation is my Christian faith, so I hope you don't find that offensive. You can just put Mother Nature in if you like instead of God. But God put lots of vitamin A rich plants in Uganda. Why don't we tell them about them instead of just trying to get one banana rich in vitamin A? So all I'm doing is getting the information out of all sorts of sources back to all the hungry and malnourished people in the world. For back in Uganda, there's just some of the really rich vitamin A plants. Vitamin A to be available has got to be cooked in oil, and that's no problem. They've got 77 plants around where you can just squeeze the oil out of them. So all we need, they can enjoy their bananas and they can enjoy all the other foods. It's all available at no fancy cost. You don't need 40 million to know that. So I've been to lots of countries, 39, I think at last count. I look for the oldest man or woman who can still walk. And I say, will you come out and be my teacher for the day? And half the time I can't even talk their language. So I have to look around for a young person. I say, I'll pay you the basic wage today if you'll be my interpreter. Basic wage is about $1.90 a day. And so I say to the young person, can you eat breadfruit leaves? And the young person says, no, you don't eat breadfruit leaves. And I say, look, today I'm asking you to be the interpreter. Please ask the older man or woman. And the older man or woman says, of course you can eat breadfruit leaves, you silly young kid. What are they teaching you in school? So I've heard this so many times now, I laugh, because it's in the heads of old people. I say to the old people, you can't read and write, so if you'll teach me, I'll write it down, I'll take the photographs, I'll send it back to your country, to your schools. I won't make a cent out of it. I'm not trying to make money. I'm just trying to help the hungry people. I don't make it up. I search all the journals in the world. I don't dare tell you how many I've been through, trying to find information about this, and then I'll try and put it back in nice, easy to understand plain English. Recently, my daughter organised a Skype into a centre in India, and before I did, I just went through the references and typed in Gujarat or Kerala or Tamil Nadu and found out how many different plants grow in the arid regions up in Gujarat or up in the cold areas in Sikkim, and just showed them they too need to make sure they get all the different plants for the different regions. So far we've got 34,455 species, 13,000 fruit, 10,000 leaves, nearly 4,000 roots, seeds, flowers, nuts, bark. I won't go through all the others, so we've got lots of variety there. This lady, I met her at a conference, said, "Quick, I want my photo with you." I was so impressed by her work. But she said the health, environmental, economic and societal costs will be substantial if we don't change our course of action when it comes to feeding the world. She's worked at FAO in Africa and other countries. And this senior advisor to CSIRO said your database of food plants is of international significance and of critical importance to world food security. So I'm not trying to be a fan getting fame or something. I just want to get the hungry people helped. Just recently, we've taken over a big old church in Burnie in Tasmania, and we've suddenly got room to display stuff. I've got about 6,000 books and thousands of posters, and all we're trying to do is get it out of scientific language that no one can understand, journals in the poor countries they can't access, books they can't afford, getting it all back into plain English and then sending it back around the world again. So it's not my work, I'm just an agricultural extension officer. But there's some of the books sitting on our website, you can all download free. 128 countries have been accessing our information, and lots of the stuff's been downloaded thousands of times, so it's disappearing. Rotary as well have been accessing our stuff and doing books to distribute their network, so it's getting out in different formats. Leaves, everyone has to have leaves, got 10,000 of those. They're rich in iron, folates for pregnant ladies, and vitamin A, so they don't go blind and other problems. And an average farm in the world is less than a hectare. 72% of the farms are less than a hectare, so you can't feed the world on animals, you've got to feed them on plants. They need zinc, so they grow tall, so they've got disease resistance. Fruit, there's 13,000 kinds of fruit, so you get your vitamin C, your magnesium, your potassium, your calcium, all the others. And then your beans, you get the protein. We've got 878 beans where you can eat the seeds. So I said, it's my trying to put my faith into practice. Jesus said, if you're not doing something about the homeless, the hungry, the thirsty and the naked, whatever else you think you are, you're not a disciple of his. And the Apostle James put it a little bit more bluntly, if you give a little sermon, go in peace, keep warm and well fed and do nothing, your faith's useless. So we're trying to put our faith into practice. In plants, there's not only the nutrients, there's lots and lots of other health benefits. The chemistry literally was getting beyond me. And then 2 top organisations in the world said they match colours. If you want antioxidants, you go for blue. If you want something else, you go for red. And I thought, wow, that's the sort of chemistry I can understand. So, but you go to the real world, the majority world, and you can see Tasmania's the centre of the universe down there in a little group, but lots of people in the world. And it's the first 1,000 days, 9 months of pregnancy and 2 years, till the kids are alive and well, and they've got to have their folate levels, their foliage, their leaves up to good levels before then. Got to eat leaves every day because your body doesn't store it. But our concern is about the kids of the world. A child's dying of undernutrition, not diseases, undernutrition every 10 seconds. And so we're trying to get it back. A child's going blind every minute from vitamin A deficiency, that's dark green leaves cooked in oil, and zinc deficiency is causing stunting, mental impairment, low disease resistance for millions. This map comes up every couple of months, showing you where the famines are going to come up in the next month. There are 3 things. Famine is when you've got a short-term crisis, the rains haven't come. Hunger is when you're hungry every day of the year. And hidden hunger is when you're short of particular micronutrients. about 193 million are facing famines at the moment. On that map, you can see them. They're the ones who get all the media attention. And it is a crisis. Of course, we ought to do something. I heard this lady give a brilliant talk. She said the trouble is we fill up their famine mug with cereals that aren't local. So they get used to foreign cereals, wheat and barley and rice and soya bean. Then they sit there for the next 3 years saying, we want more of those. They're not suitable. They can't grow them in their country. What we should have done is fill it up with teff and fronio and finger millet and bulrush millet. There is a country, I think it's called Australia. It's the second biggest tropical country in the world, and it's very arid, and we could grow all these cereals. The next time there's a famine, we could send them the right plant. Just there's the maps. We're trying to face infant mortality. They're desperately poor. Many of them can't read, so we have to keep it simple. This lady up in northeast India sent me a lovely email saying your information has equipped me for a lifetime. So that's the sort of satisfaction I like. But we're trying to put them all back. Once the United Nations asked, could they call me an agroecologist? I thought that was an angry ecologist. I looked it up. Someone trying to put the right plant in the right place and grow it the right way so they can get the right food. And I said, yep, you've understood my heart. And local plants obviously suit local conditions. If they didn't, they would have died out. They suit the soil, the climate, the pests, the diseases, and they're trying to rediscover them. At one stage, I worked on a World Bank project up in the highlands of New Guinea, and they kept saying to me, can't you write scientific language? Can't you do scientific research? And I said, I want to write plain English so that people can understand it. If my information is wrong, let me know. So I did a couple of books for the province we were in. They're sitting on our website and they've been downloaded. But when they reviewed that project, that was the headlines. 26 million spent, 26 million wasted. You don't need fancy scientific research. If you see these desperately pot-bellied kids, you know their stomach is full of a starchy staple, and you just say, look, plant a few beans. Grab the right beans for the right place, and you've solved the problem. There's lots of choices, so we don't take a temperate bean. We find a local bean that grows easily and naturally and get them to eat that. Last time I was in Papua New Guinea, this was the newspaper headlines, vitamin A supply go down. And I thought, that's funny. I thought God had already put lots of vitamin A rich plants, but the mothers don't know. So I went down to the local market and there they all were. And they've even got now a chap's been teaching them how to squeeze oil out of plants. So they're all the answers are there. They just need to be empowered with the information. I'm not the only one who knows vitamin A deficiency is a problem. So they breed GMO rice, grab a gene out of another plant. Then you've got to buy chemicals, you've got to buy fertilizer, you've got to buy new seed, and you've got to eat 0.5 kilogram a day. And that's called the green revolution. Or instead of that, if you wanted to, you could say, look, wander across to the edge of the rice field, grab that taro leaf, put it in the pot and fry it. That's got enough vitamin A for 3 kids. That's called the evergreen revolution. It's a different way of thinking about the problems. So there you are. You can see for the 33% of the world that are anemic, cabbage is bottom of the pile, and they've got local stuff 10 times as good. And so a third of the world is roughly as anemic, iron deficient. When I went to Cambodia, I said, I've read about a book, Mommy In, I've never seen it. And the lady said, well, go out and get you some out of the garden. So they dashed out, got some out of the garden, brought it back in. And they said, we've been told to pull this out, it's a weed, and grow proper plants like cabbage and lettuce. I said, it's a free world, you can eat what you like. But that's how much better your local plant is than cabbage and lettuce. And they just about hugged me. They said, we love our local plant. We hate cabbages. So it's just there. In the desert, you don't irrigate the desert. You type 4 words into our database, fruit, tree, arid Africa, in the right little boxes, press the button, and you're suddenly an author of 372 fruit trees that grow in arid areas in Africa. If you put the right plant in the right place, if you're old like me, you can drop dead. And your grandchildren will still have some food to eat. So it's a matter of putting the right plant in the right place. If you put the wrong plant, you've got to stay alive to water it and fertilise it and other things. So if your food isn't tasty enough, there's plenty of things around to make it spicy and taste it up. When we were in China, everything was in Chinese, of course, on their phones. I'd point to it in the market and these ladies would be on their mobile phone And then they'd turn around and show me the Latin name, which is still the same in every language in the world. And I'd write it down. My wife and I have been around Malaysian markets, photographing all the plants, and got lots of photographs of ladies in markets. But the 3,100 edible plants in Malaysia, when you get back to Australia, at the moment we've got that many indigenous edible plants, ones that have always been here. And I did a talk on that sitting on our website. And I'm very, very grateful to my wife who does all the things that I'm not smart enough to do. And trouble is, she sits down on the job sometimes, but lots of the plants, this is up in North Queensland, people were paying a fortune for noni juice. And I said, just contact your friends, tell them go down to the beach, pick you a bucket full and shove it through the juicer and send it down to you. Some plants are some countries are very short of information. Myanmar's been out of the information loop for 50 years. I met a lady and said, we'll send you all the posters we've got for Thailand and Myanmar. Thailand's got nearly 3,000 plants and Myanmar's got a few more. And we send them off in free to different countries. One of our board members got these done in the local language for Zimbabwe, and a container was sending second-hand books there. So we filled up the space with some posters for the schools. You go to Malawi, that one will tolerate drought. That one's good for anemia. That one's rich in zinc to stop your disease problems. That one's got folic acid for pregnancy. That one can be stored well, and there are thousands of kinds of sorghum. So all the answers are ultimately there. I see them, from my perspective, as God's amazing provisions. A chap in Malawi contacted me and said, I did my training overseas. I know all my temperate plants. I don't even know my tropical plants anymore. So I sent him information. You go to Vanuatu out in the Pacific, that one grows in the mangroves. That one's the richest in the world in folates. That one stimulates a milk supply for a mother. That one's very rich in protein. That one will grow in the swamps. That one can be stored well. That one's really rich in vitamin C. So potentially all the answers are there. You go for diversity. To print stuff out's expensive. Rotary helped print out the books for Solomon Islands. They seem to have been well accepted. So our whole aim and our whole philosophy is helping hungry people feed themselves well by strategic use of God's amazing natural resources. If we send them money, they become dependent on us. Rotary were trying to get a group in North Uganda interested, and they said, oh, we don't need to grow anything. Our container full of food comes every month. The last couple of days just before the truck arrives, sometimes you get a little bit hungry, but I'd like to empower them how to do it themselves. So you can go on our website, foodplantsinternational.com. All our books are there and other stuff in our databases, but we haven't necessarily got all our posters up there yet. If you want to, you can contact us, and for $20, we can give you a high-capacity, high-speed USB flash drive with everything on. And then if you've got any contacts, particularly in the poor world, you can send them out and share them. Now, don't ask me too many hard questions. I mightn't know the answer.
Oh, well, thank you, Bruce. It's a fascinating story, and the amount of work that you've done is, as I said at the beginning, is quite mind-blowing. I'm sure there'll be some questions, but let me start. The work of actually collecting the technical information about the plants is obviously something that takes a lot of time and energy, because it's all going to be in different places and different formats and so on. How have you gone about actually collecting that information and bringing it into some sort of standard format?
Well, as I said before, in our centre in Burnie, we've got thousands of books. But I've also got I tried to add it up before, 50,000 scientific articles that I've downloaded off the internet. Some of the academia and some of them actually chase the articles. They work out what I'm after and they find plants for different countries. So the internet is a bit mind-blowing. And then I've been to lots of countries and I've been to lots of conferences, and I try and share our information with everybody else there. And then I ask them, can they help me find information? And most important of all, I literally spend hours in markets in poor countries asking the ladies. They're a wealth of information. And then we go to botanical gardens so we can make sure we've got the right plant and the right name and chasing it in all sorts of directions.
I was just wondering how you get the message out to the people who would be the ones that need to grow the plants.
Obviously, we need to go through people who can read and can write. We try and go to health workers, agricultural workers, training centres, any place at schools and universities, of course. And we say, do us a favour, share it with everyone you've got. We've given it to you free. We want you to share it around. And we are getting enough feedback. A lady came back from Solomon Islands, had been out there to visit a friend, went out to the market to buy some food. And the lady said, oh, just before you buy anything, can we explain the different food values? And this lady looked blown away that the people in the village said, how do you know this? And said, oh, we've got a book that shows it all to us. The lady didn't work out who wrote the book, so she came back telling my daughter. And my daughter said, well, I did the nutrition in the book. My dad wrote the book. It's getting out there. That's all I need to know, that people are quoting it and saying it's useful. So that's the biggest challenge, getting it out there, though.
Yes, yes.
Thanks.
Jeffrey, I'm absolutely blown away by the amount of information which Bruce has collected. My question actually was very similar to the first one. But it seems to me this is the sort of information that both local and national governments should be using. Does it reach that sort of level, Bruce?
I hate politics, so I'm going to make my comments carefully. But Vanuatu has just put out their 10-year agricultural policy, how to grow 10 temperate vegetables. Now, Vanuatu must have flooded out of the tropics. I don't know what's happened. Solomon Islands, we've distributed stuff to lots of countries, but Solomon Islands, the head of the education department, contacted us back and said, can we break up all your material and use it in grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, right to the syllabus? I said, please do, I'll be delighted. So a chap turned up at a conference once and said, oh, I'm using all your photos in my presentation. I said, good, that's why I sent them to you. I don't want them to sit on a shelf. I want them to be used to. We've got some lovely contacts. My daughter chases contacts in different countries to promote it. One in Zimbabwe and the chap I mentioned before in India and different countries. And we say, do us a favour, can you help get it out to the world that needs it? Some government levels are very keen. I have terrible trouble convincing Africans not to fill up their stomachs on cabbage. I was going to church one day and I said, I'm going into the Chichewa service, and the lady served me a cup of coffee. And I said, she said, I can't speak Chichewa anymore. I'm an educated African. I've got to eat Western vegetables, I've got to wear Western clothes, and I've got to speak English. So it's a mindset, it's got status. And you've got to find popular people, sports people, film stars, all sorts of popular people to help change the mindset. Some countries they'll change overnight, Vanuatu, Solomons, Cambodia, and other countries they take a fair bit of convincing.
Jim, Bruce, a serious question. Has the study that you've done over so many years dramatically changed your eating habits given what is available to us in Australia?
Yeah, we do try and practice what we preach. We don't want to be hypocrites. There's enough Christians who are hypocrites. But I'm not a very good cook. I can really only do stir-frieds or Irish stews. But if you turn up at our house for our stir-fried, I reckon I'd have 15 or 20 different things in the food.
Right.
The head nutritionist in the United Nations said, don't even get technical. Don't confuse them with details. Just tell them to eat a big wide range. And if it's missing in this plant, it'll be in this plant. Eat some nuts and fruit and seeds and different things. And the biggest challenge now is how to get it out. So if any of you can help get it out, contact us via our website or whatever, or my email, and we can send you a USB with everything on, and then it's all Creative Commons copyright 3, which means you can't start selling it and try and make money out of it, but you can copy it and share it and give it to anyone you want anywhere in the world. And they can translate it into their local language. The governor's husband in Tasmania got it translated in Timor into Tetun and Bahasa, and so it's getting out to different countries. So,
and there must be a wonderful resource in the, I imagine, for study and practical outcomes in the foods of our Australian Aborigines.
yes, in Tasmania we've got 180 indigenous fruits, edible plants, and in Australia we've got about, I think it's 1,800. I can't remember all the numbers.
Yeah.
Leaves and fruit.
Yeah.
So I contacted a chap last week on Facebook. It was his birthday, and he showed what he's having, and I said, "Why don't you?" An Aboriginal chap. I said, "Why aren't you eating the 1,576 local edible plants in your region that are indigenous to be a good Aboriginal person?"
So what could we be planting in our vegetable patches in our back gardens that we don't currently plant that would be very, very good for us?
There is quite a good book, I can't think of its name at the moment, on edible plants in the Melbourne area.
Right.
I have been in touch with the lady and I can't think what her name is. I'd have to ask my wife later, but one of the humorous ones, one of the world's experts on weeds, who's now I think died, said he used to watch his wife weeding the garden, and she's going through pulling out the most nutritious edible plants in the garden, calling them weeds. Fat hen, chickweed, all sorts of things. If you're an old man like me, you think, why should I eat stingy nettle? It's got an ingredient in that stops you going to the toilet 3 times a night. Once you get it in the pot, it doesn't sting anymore. It's only the hairs sting. So my wife just sent me a message saying it was Doris Posey, P-O-Z-Z-I, who's in Healesville, has written a lovely book on edible plants in the Victorian area.
Well, we seem to have a proliferation of chickweed in our back garden, so I'll have to look at it differently in future.
Yes. Fat hen and chickweed. People are now raving over what's the one like chickweed? No.
I used to breed budgerigars.
I think of the scientific names. Chenopodium quinoa. They're raving over quinoa, and yet they're pulling out fat hen, which is Chenopodium album. So, and the seeds are just as nutritious for quinoa and for fat hen. So it's funny how the fads pass and the information is not there. So
it's fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah. Things like dog rose, where you spray them in the fence lines, 13 times as rich in vitamin C as citrus. So things are all around us.
There's a lot of money made in this world by those that breed plants and retain the intellectual property of them. How does your work interface with what is produced by people who are trying to increase yields of plants and also adaptability of the plants, and particularly in relation to weeds and vermin attacks on the plants?
So if we jumped back to that, I think the second and third slides I had, all those organisations around the world have a commitment to nutrition and helping the hungry and the environment. They're top professional international organisations without trying to make money. And when I said the man who gave 40 million to a university in Australia, I'm not naming the person or the university, he's one of the worst offenders who goes for GMO plants, sues you if the seeds blow over your fence onto your property and you grow them. So it's a different mindset. Is money God, or is God God? And put the right plant in the right place.
As a follow-up, one of the concerns of the planet at the moment is the fact that we're trying to control control emissions and so on. And there's certain plants in this world that have got this ability, and I was astounded watching what was underneath the sea being used. They're plants as well. Do you actually extend into aquaculture?
The two groups of plants I put in, but I'm not confident with, are mushrooms and seaweeds. So in our database, I've got them all in, what the references are, where they grow. And if you sent me out into the field, I probably couldn't find them. I'm not sure. Mushrooms are a little bit touchy. Sometimes you can eat it and I can't. Sometimes if you're drinking alcohol at the same time, so some are less, but seaweeds, Tasmania's worldwide known to be short of iodine in our soils. And where is it all? It's in the seaweeds around our coast. So go and get the seaweeds and eat them. So the answers are there if we got a bit more adventurous.
Thank you.
Bruce, is the work that's sometimes being done on gene manipulation affecting the work that you do and the plants to any large extent, or is it a bit incidental?
A lovely story, I can't think of her name now, of a lady in America who was top breeding GMO maize, and then she suddenly had a very serious allergic reaction and ended up in hospital, and said, I'm going to change my attitude towards plants and plant breeding, has gone back to traditional maize breeding and now travels all through Africa. But some of the very, very powerful, rich companies try and stop her information being published because they say it's bad against our business. So, so there is a lot of tensions there, and I avoid them. I don't like tension, and just tell people to get on, grow local plants. You can save your own seed, do your own cuttings, and get on with it. And the top one, Dr. Swaminathan in India, was a leader in the world for GMO high-tech plants. And then he said, we're going down a blind alley. We're not helping the poor, we're not helping the ladies, we're wasting money. And he's the one who used that term, evergreen revolution. He's written a book called What We Need is an Evergreen Revolution. He's got his own institute in India. We've sent him information and we've emailed and things. He's getting elderly now, but I mentioned him once at a conference where I was speaking, and this Indian lady came dashing up after us. Oh, he's my uncle. Pulled out all the family photographs. I haven't ever met him. I've just communicated with him. So there are people who are changing their mindset. And there are conferences now called the Neglected and Underutilised Species, NUS. And I've spoken to 3 of those, and I got the award at the one in India for the best presentation. So there are people around who are trying to rediscover a different approach.
I was wondering how you interface with the organisation that's responsible for trying to keep seeds preserved, so in case of any calamity that occurs, and whether you are able to interface with a lot of these natural seeds and of plants that you come across with being able to store them for the future.
I'm getting a little bit mentally overloaded these days, but I have sent information to biodiversity and different groups. Some of those quote my work. Some seeds you can store, and I think it's delightful that they store them all. Lots of plants, yams, tyros, bananas, all sorts of other things you can't store. They won't, and lots of tropical seeds, nuts are large, they can't be stored, so you try and encourage people to look after them. Papua New Guinea has got the biggest diversity of sugarcane, yams, bananas, wing beans in the world, and you try and encourage people to keep the diversity and look after their local plants, and they do a brilliant job at it.
Okay, well, Bruce, it's really been interesting, I think, and we've certainly learned a lot, and probably had our eyes opened to some of the things that just weren't part of our consciousness beforehand. So on behalf of the association, we'd like to say thank you very much. I certainly wish you well and the organisation well as you continue this work, both locally and obviously internationally. So I think I'm sure everyone would agree and express our appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you. It's lovely to have an obsession. So And if you can help get it out around the world, we'll be delighted. So, that's it.